So the first thing I noticed when I started, wrote a couple things down. What do I want to ask Chris about? You've been at Fox since 2003. So I was born in 98. My entire life watching football on Fox has kind of been the same. It's been the same crew. Like, is that kind of a pleasure to be able to say that? And there have been small changes, but it's been the same analysts working together and broadcasting football games on Fox for a long time.
Yeah, except for, and I worked a lot with Troy Aikman and Joe Buck, Aaron Andrews, right, and they moved over. Great for them at ESPN, and they've made Monday Night Football back to the great project that it is. But Tom Brady, having a chance to get him in the broadcast booth has changed things just a little bit. But the crew, the pregame show when we have our seminar, and I work with Mark Schlereth, Mark Sanchez, different analysts through the years at Daryl Johnston, and we all get to hang out. And once a year, we're all in the same place before in the off season when we go over rules and the season ahead. It's a lot of fun, and I think viewers' continuity matters. And as you said here,
yes.
I mean, you're a young guy. I was at ESPN through the 90s in my early years where I began, which I talk about. I have a book out called That Deserves a Wow, which addresses that. And then I can't believe I thought I'd be there my whole broadcast career, but as Fox grew, had the opportunity to work a Super Bowl and work on World Series on the actual network broadcast. And so I can't believe the amount of time that's gone by. But yeah, continuity, seeing a regular face, matters. And here, just like hearing a Jim Nantz or a Mike Tirico, some of the guys, and there's a great guy. I worked with Tirico back in the early years at ESPN. I won't leave any names out, but the Fox crew has been together with certain additions, as you said, but basically that main core, they get along well, and they know where each other is going in a broadcast, and try to serve the viewer the best way we can.
It's a lot of the same music and the graphics. Like, I can think back to when I was really, really young, and I'm watching the Packers and the Lions or the Fox game on Thanksgiving, and it's a lot of the same faces. How much do you think the viewer at home enjoying a broadcast crew and feeling like, you hear this a lot, that's a big game announcer, how much of that is just they've done a lot of games and we're used to them?
Yeah, that's a good question. That and I think that having done, I've done the big games, my old slogan is every night's the Super Bowl, so I treat every game that important, because the viewer and the team, for those, it is important, and it should be to us doing it, whether it's two teams that aren't contending or two teams playing that for the right to go to the Super Bowl. So I do think when you get the best game, you get a great crowd, you get a good matchup, even if the game, you get the best stars in the game. So the announcers, they have to be on their game, but you're already ahead of the game in the eyes of the viewer, because you're turning in, you're already excited. It's like going to see a comedian, unknown in the nightclub versus Jerry Seinfeld. He's going to be funny, so you're already ready to laugh with him. So, but any football game to me, and that's why I don't look, I love the business enough, and having done radio in a number of different roles, from studio host to Sports Center to calling games and sideline, but calling an NFL game is such a rush that you can prepare, and it's great, and then you get out there, and it truly is live, unpredictable, and you have an analyst to play off it. It really is fun. I mean, and that's why it's natural, I think, to get excited and call a game that way.
It feels big every time, even if it's maybe the smallest market of the entire. It's still a regular season NFL game.
Yes,
and there's no comparison in any other sport, really, because they're all so huge. And I know you're here with Mueller, and I want to ask you about that. Tell us about the process of calling a game. So let's say you're doing Packers-Bears on Sunday. When do you get into town? What's the production meeting like? Just kind of paint the picture for what your job outside of those 3 hours is like.
Yeah, and that's what's cool about it, because unlike being the home team announcer where you already know your team all the time, you're with them, we get different games. So let's say I have a 49er Ram game Sunday. On Sunday night, the next schedule is the Bears-Packers, where I get that game. I'm already looking at, on the flight home, the roster. If I haven't done a game this season with those teams, and it's early in the year, I'm already going over the numbers, the rosters, the players, the starters, reserve, that type of thing. iPad, I can actually watch the game that they just recently played. We have access to coaching video. We get clips sent from our researchers. They'll already be sending those in from the game they had or 2 weeks ago, or certain profiles on players. So it really starts then. So anyway, you get home, you get a break, a day or two. You usually watch the game you just did to go over things that
you're breaking down your film too.
Yeah,
cool.
I do that. Some guys don't like to, but I've always done that. Even when I did, a local newscast, I go back and watch it to make sure, hey, the highlight here, the emphasis there. Sometimes you
find it productive.
You could overanalyze, but I think it's worth to watch. And people can tell you, hey, check this or watch this, so that you're sharper. And don't call it too early. Don't be in a rush if the penalty to guess. Wait for the official. Those kinds of little things that just to make it more comfortable for the viewer. But then you're, after Monday or Tuesday, maybe some day off, you're talking to the producer about, okay, so we're going on Friday to Chicago or Green Bay, wherever the game for Friday's practice. This is how our crew likes to do it because they like watching it, and then we meet with them afterwards. But we're deciding who do we want to talk to in our production meetings. We have access. And then Wednesday, Thursday, you're pretty much zeroing in on that week's matchup with both teams. Who's hurt, who you're going to talk to in the meetings, what statistics, what graphics do we want to jump on early. Friday, the home team, so let's just say it's the Bears, we would go to their practice, meet with their top 3 or 4 guys, quarterback, coach, coordinator, whatever, a few other stars. No cameras, but they're very comfortable with us, and that really gives us a feel for the game.
And that's earned, I suppose, over the years of meeting with these coaches from
trust. Yes, like Kyle Shanahan's a guy. He'll tell us something really candid and say, don't quote me, but if you're wondering why this guy's not in the game, it's because he's a whip when it comes to blocking. So just say you guys word it the way you want. But so that's very helpful, and they trust you. And then the Saturday the visiting team comes in, and we meet with them, and then we have our kind of a production dinner in the evening to go over the material from those teams, and then add it into the broadcast with the guys in graphics, the guys in stats, the kind of, and then we hit it Sunday, and then usually you can get home by Sunday night, depending upon the game you have. And I always root. They tease me because the crew works all day, but I always root for overtime. They're like, oh, we're going to miss our flight. But to me, if you get overtime in a game, that means it was a good game and both teams were in it. And you're going to have, your chances are you're going to have a dramatic finish one way or another, unless it ends in a tie, which can happen as well. So that's kind of the process, and it's a fun process because I would be watching games anyway as a fan, and I would care. I would be, hey, great, I'm doing a Jet game. I'm going to sit down with Aaron Rodgers and hear what he has to say, and they're much more candid in those meetings without cameras and recording.
Yeah, well, and lastly, I want to pick a little bit more on that as a sports fan, and I can't imagine all broadcasters are the same level of sports fan. I'm sure it varies. Like, I'm a broadcaster. Maybe I'm not as nerdy as a fan, but even in this job, like, you can just talk to college coaches, local college coaches or whatever. Coaches and players are some of the most interesting people. When you ask them questions, they just think about things from different angles and they give you tidbits. So I'm sure if you're a big fan, you'd be watching the games anyways. What an awesome opportunity to just pick the brain of the people who control and coach in the game that you love.
Yeah, and as much as I love sports and football, I also am a big fan of interviewers. I mean, Johnny Carson growing up, I know it's a different generation, whether it's Letterman or Larry King or Howard Stern.
Love King.
There's styles of interview, and I always look like, how did he get that out of them? And so if people are comfortable, they usually reveal things. There's an old line from a movie that I have used in my career about approaching interviews, because I interviewed Muhammad Ali at 16, one of my first interviews when I was doing radio, which was a little intimidating. But it is treat the regular guy like a star and a star like the regular guy, and that way you're not intimidated, but you also don't overlook somebody who may be interesting or have a story to tell. And so I kind of use that approach with athletes, coaches, players, whether it's Patrick Mahomes or we're talking to the third string tackle, pregame before the game, reporting on the Super Bowl.
You do so many different sports. Like, you're a pillar of Fox's NASCAR. Is that a fun challenge? You sometimes wish that you could settle into just do one thing, or is it fun to cross sports and maybe use different parts of your vocabulary, your cadence that you wouldn't otherwise?
Yeah, no, I like doing different sports. I think I look, the NFL is my first passion and love, but when that season ends, we can still talk NFL, but I love covering baseball, and then NASCAR. I like the role of the pre-race show because I get to talk to drivers. The access is great. I get to talk to our analysts, and then the race unfolds. And it's fun that way. It keeps me sharp as a fan and as a broadcaster. And sometimes I need to compartmentalize when they overlap. But it's always think of the viewer in mind about what they want when I go out to do a broadcast.
It's a lot of time on your feet. You're traveling a lot. You're here with Mueller, so tell me a little bit about that before you go.
Yeah, Mueller Sports Medicine. They've been around for more than 60 years.
Yeah.
Professional athletes have used, I'm sure you've seen knee braces, arm braces, anything with pain relief, but they do it the right way. And they recently, the last couple of years, the FDA has approved innovative on their part. It's essentially, I'll just call it a leg boot sleeve you would put on each leg, and you can have this at home. They have it at some high-end gyms and training centers for the pros, but regular guys who get tired of walking or playing pickleball or basketball or hiking or just somebody who has circulation problems in your legs, it'll do a couple of things. Number one, it'll relieve any pain, and you can plug it in and adjust the pressure you want, the compression, for 20 minutes for a few nights. So it relieves the pain, and then it also re-energizes. So if you played a lot of basketball or tennis and you were hurting, but you want to play the next morning, you have this during the evening, and it'll give you that strength and take away any injury risk or further injury risk or pain, and you'll be able to play the next morning or the next day. So it's for the weekend warrior. It's available at Walmart.com or MuellerRevive.com, and I now you can have it at home, and other people can use it in the family. My wife's a big pickleball player, and she uses it because she plays pickleball nonstop and needs to re-energize and ease the pain in her legs.
Well, Chris, you're a legend. We've heard you on sports in our houses for a long time, so thanks for the time. I appreciate it, man.
No, thank you. I enjoyed the interview.
Yeah, well, we'll take 3 minutes.